Hello everyone, my name is Amanda, and in today's video I'm going to be creating an entire outfit from scratch. So both of these items are things that I have seen all over Instagram and Pinterest, and I really like how they look, but I am pretty sure that if I bought them somewhere they would not look very good on me. Plus this year I'm challenging myself to not buy any new clothing items at all and make everything or buy it secondhand. So in today's video I'm going to be making a miniskirt and a cardigan. Or rather, condensing a month and a half's worth of work into 10 minutes. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into the video. The first piece I worked on was the miniskirt. I drafted my own pattern by lots of trial and error, and ended up with 4 panels, 2 sides, 1 front, and 1 back panel. I cut everything out and zigzagged the edges to keep them from fraying. Then I basically just started by pinning down the panels right sides together and sewing everything with a straight stitch. Then I remembered that I needed to be able to get this thing on and decided to split the back panel into 2 so I could place a zipper in the center back seam. I really wanted to make a tiny slit in the front like all those trendy Instagram models are wearing, so I left the equivalent of 2 squares plus the bottom hem open. To line the top of my skirt, I made this round panel by tracing the top of my pattern pieces and cutting it into one long strip. This will provide some structure and hopefully a little bit of comfort, the place where the skirt is the tightest. I pinned this around the top of the skirt right sides facing and attached it with a straight stitch all the way across. I folded the lining to the inside of the skirt and pressed everything down, making the fabric from the front of the skirt overlap just a tiny bit. This is just to make sure the insert doesn't peek out. So far I've stitched together all of the panels and the little insert here in the top. And what I've done on the back here, because I'm going to put in an invisible zipper, is I've stitched regularly about halfway up or until I want my zipper to start. And then here I just put in some very long stitches, so that I can flip it over and stitch it in and then remove them later, just to make sure that the fabric is very tight together over the zipper. So next step is pressing the seams down and stitching in the zipper, and then I can start folding back the bottom hem and top stitching down along the top. I actually got this fabric at the clearance section at the fabric store. They sold it as a piece of scrap fabric, and I presume it was because it was left over from a larger yardage, but it was plenty for my project here. Now, I do not have a good track record regarding zippers. In fact, they are probably my least favorite part of any sewing project because I just cannot seem to get them right. But I tried a new method today, and even though it didn't come out anywhere near perfect, I'm actually very satisfied with the result. I used a seam ripper to remove the basting stitches over the zipper, and look, it can open and close. I know it's not perfect, but I'm definitely not mad. Back to the top of the skirt, I finished that off by top stitching as close to the edge as possible. This gives it a really clean and crisp edge. For the back of the insert, I'm going to hand sew it down over the zipper and tack it down in a few places around the skirt, only catching the seam allowance from the other panels so it doesn't show through. I pressed down the bottom hem of the skirt, making sure to follow all the guidelines of the pattern. That actually came out really handy. Then I hand sewed the bottom hem, folding it up by about 1 square. I'm using this stitch that I don't know what it's called, but basically I only catch a very small thread of the fabric that can be seen from the front, so you can hardly tell it's there. I also tried to place my thread strategically on top of the black threads of the fabric. This is how I hem everything, actually, including pants. I know it's not as quick as sewing it on the machine, but I think it looks a lot nicer. Okay, so I finished hemming the bottom seam, and I think it turned out really great. So now all I have to do is just sew around this slit here with the machine, and then I decided to add some belt straps. And I'm gonna add 2 on the front here on each of the seams, and on the back I'm gonna add 2, I think, on the seams as well, and 1 on each side of the zipper. And then I should be pretty much finished. So yeah, I'm super happy with this slit, and now all I'm missing are the belt straps. And I just cut a long strip of fabric about 1.5 centimeters wide, folded it and sewed it wrong sides together. And then I kind of folded that seam allowance just into the middle so it's only visible from one side. I top stitched that down as well and measured about 7 centimeters for each belt loop and cut them all out using the first one as a guide. Then I placed all of them where I wanted them to be on the skirt, pointing upwards with the wrong side facing out. I ran over all of them with the machine, making sure they were nice and secure. For the other side, I folded the very top in so there are no raw edges facing out. The second piece I made was a cardigan. Now, I don't usually wear cardigans, but I really like the trend where people wear them more like a button-down top, so I wanted to emulate that with this piece. I went ahead and started knitting the entire back and one of the front pieces, mostly because this video will be way too long if I had to go through every step. I also want to clarify that this is not a knitting tutorial because I am in no way an authority on knitting. But I'll leave a short version of the pattern in the description box down below if you have a project you would like to use it for. The pattern for the cardigan is basically made up of small diamond shapes with a whole pattern around them, and I think it looks really beautiful and intricate, and it's not even that hard to do. All you need to know how to do is a regular knit stitch, yarn over, some more knit stitches, and then knitting 3 stitches together, like so. These are repeated in different orders for all the rows on the right side. All the rows on the wrong side are just purl stitches. Okay, so now I've gotten to the point where the neckline will start. So from this side I will start taking in loops, and then when I finish the neckline I will just keep knitting until this piece is as long as the back piece. Okay, so now I have 3 pieces for the bodice all done. They look very small and crumpled up right now, but I'm going to fix that later. For now I just have to trust the recipe and keep going. The next step is sewing together the shoulder seams using a mattress stitch, and knitting the sleeves. So I jumped ahead and did that off camera too. So along this vertical seam I'm going to pick up stitches by inserting my needle into the front of the very edge and pulling through a strand of my yarn, creating a stitch. This is repeated all the way down. Now I can start over with my diamond pattern again, this time knitting away from the shoulder seam. And I'm still alternating rows, so every second one is a purl row and the rest are the pattern. I repeat the pattern 5.5 times, so 5.5 diamond shapes. This part alone took me a couple of days, so I'm gonna skip ahead a bit for everyone's sake. Once I make it to the end where I want my pattern to end, I finish it with an edge like this, featuring a whole pattern using the stocking stitch. I'll show you how I did this in more detail a bit later. Okay, so now I have all the pieces of my garment knit and attached to each other. Now, the original recipe that I'm knitting after is actually not a cardigan, but a closed top. So these front edges I'm just kind of making up as I go. I decided to pick up the stitches along both front edges to tie in with the rest of the cardigan. I'm doing that the same way I picked up stitches for the sleeves, but instead I'm going directly into making the edge pattern. When I got to the bottom hem, I stopped at the row with the holes, because once everything gets folded in, that's the only thing that makes sense. Now, of course, for the one side I had to make some buttonholes. I did this on the right side and marked out the placement for all 6 buttonholes with some thread. I started by knitting 3 rows of the stocking stitch, and then this 4th one is where the buttonholes start. I just needed small ones, so I made them by yarning over once and then knitting 2 stitches together. This is repeated for the 5 other buttonholes, and then I knit 3 more rows above this. Now for the row of holes, I'm using the exact same method as for the buttonholes. So knit 1, yarn over, and knit 2 together. And then I just repeat that for the entire row. I finish off the edge with 7 more rows of the stocking stitch, so alternating between knit and purl rows. Okay, so I just finished knitting the collar and I'm so excited because now I get to do one of the last steps It says in the recipe to wet the blouse and then lay it out on a towel according to some measurements so that it stretches and holds its shape. Okay, I don't know why, but this makes me super nervous. Okay, I'll just do it, I guess. Okay, so now I have placed it out on a towel after the measurements, and then I just wait till it dries. Okay, so it's the next day and the cardigan is dry. Now all I have to do is stitch up along the sides here, and then close off all the edges by folding them inwards and stitching them down. And as you can see, the pattern has actually been stretched out so it's more flat. And yeah, I think it looks really good. I sewed the side seams together using what I think is called a mattress stitch, and to be honest, I'm probably not doing it completely right, but I'm trying to catch every stitch with my needle going back and forth between the two pieces I'm joining. One of the hardest parts was matching up the pattern. It's really easy to accidentally pull tighter on one side and then get a mismatched seam. After joining the seams, I had to finish all the edges by folding them inwards on the row with holes, making this almost scallop-looking pattern. I stitched down the edge by catching the outermost stitch and going very lightly through, making sure it's not too visible from the outside. These finishing touches on the cardigan took an entire day, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So here are my finished pieces, and I really love both of them. I think they go great together, but I can also see myself wearing them with lots of different outfits. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see me do more sewing or knitting or have ideas for any future videos, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!